to Sovereign Conversations with the Soul Attorney, the podcast where law, leadership, and liberation collide. I'm your host, Vanessa Locicero, lawyer, entrepreneur, energy worker, and your guide to building a business and life that's truly sovereign. Here, we challenge the status quo, outdated business rules, and explore what it really means to be sovereign in your life and work. Whether we're breaking down legal essentials, tapping into spiritual downloads and the power of intention, or we're having deep, unfiltered conversations with visionary entrepreneurs, healers, and thought leaders, every episode is designed to help you step into your power, protect what matters, and create your life on your own terms. So if you're ready to create a life and business rooted in belief, power, and purpose, take a deep breath, step into your sovereignty, because court is now in session.
Oh, 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 oh.
You guys already know the drill. Court is now in session. Welcome back to another episode of Sovereign Conversations with the Soul Attorney. I am really glad that you're here because today I am going to be talking all about boundaries and my journey with boundaries and how they became my superpower, and how when you create a framework for your boundaries, it will give you the space to expand into. So I'm really excited for this episode because I've had to learn the hard way. I've hit burnout a few times in my career journey so far, and I don't want that energy for anybody if it can be avoided. And boundaries were a really big part of how I was able to strategically work my way out of burnout. And that feeling of burning out in your life and in your business can be so heavy. It can really make you feel so drained and question whether or not everything you've been working for is worth it, whether you're even like on the right path in the first place. But I want you to know that when you put boundaries up, it's not selfish. It is not. It's sacred. It's necessary. And I'm really excited to dive into all of the things today about boundaries. So we're going to, I have some notes here that I'm going to take us through, how to recognize when and where you're leaking energy in your business and in your life. Some of the biggest myths that there are about setting boundaries, because it's a highly debated topic. Some people are like, boundaries are, selfish, where others, boundaries are something that are essential to them, and they don't necessarily have to have that negative connotation that some people might inherently, attach to boundaries. And I'm going to walk you through a script where you can like mentally get into the space of enforcing your boundaries with clients, with family, and with yourself, because sometimes it's those personal, accountabilities and goals that we set ourselves to that, we need to have a boundary with ourself. So let's dive in. Okay. First and foremost, I want to take you back to the version of me when I had zero boundaries, because maybe this is where you're at right now. So, obviously on my journey to becoming a lawyer, I wanted to be the best, work in the best firm, set myself up for success, really, give my all, do whatever it takes to succeed. And so, not only as a lawyer, but multiply that and exponentially, compound that pressure when you couple being a lawyer with being an entrepreneur. And now you're a solo lawyer and you have your professional standards to keep up with, as well as all of the various hats that go into being an entrepreneur, like learning this whole new language of like marketing and sales and systems, admin, operations, like financial management. Like there were so many things, starting a business and being a lawyer, that I was like going all all out all the time. And the irony of like leaving a 9 to 5 or leaving a career in a law firm where I was like, oh, freedom being my number one value. Like I was stepping out of something that felt very where I felt very caged in. And then I put myself into a whole new situation that was just as overwhelming. And I felt just as caged in because I had no boundaries, because I was so focused on getting started and getting going. And I came at everything from this like fear-based, like, oh, if I don't do it, I'm not going to get the clients. If I don't, show up in this way, or if I don't burn the candle at both ends, then I'm not going to make it to the next level, or I'm not going to, be able to pay my bills or pay my staff or do these things. So like those stresses are real as a business owner, no doubt. But it was basically going to the other end of the spectrum and too many, calls late at night, too many, early mornings, being in my inbox, like before I even, had my first cup of coffee. All of these things I thought like made me a martyr in my business, made me successful, allowed me to, jump my business, in the first couple years. But without those boundaries, like, it's like my business grew so fast that I almost couldn't keep up. And so that is where, more recently, like last year, I was on such a growth spurt, and then all of a sudden had to really like pull back because I didn't have the boundaries in place and the systems and the things that I needed in my business to take me to the next level. So sometimes you do have to, take a step back in order to take 2 steps forward. And sometimes boundaries can feel like that, especially when you have to say no to certain things or to certain people or certain potential clients. A really great example of setting a boundary in business, and we'll talk a little bit more about these in a bit, is like, if you have a specific ideal client avatar and that like that's the client you want to work with. And if you're, out there and you're like taking all these other clients because like, oh, you need the sale, and you're clogging up your pipeline, clogging up your, business with work that is not your ideal client type. Like, that's a great example of starting from a fear-based place and making decisions that are not in alignment with your boundaries, which, eventually those are the clients who end up being like the worst, the ones that you wish you never took on in the first place. So I want to avoid falling into this like resentment trap for like overdoing it, overexerting ourselves, because all it takes is saying no. No is a full sentence. Okay, so what are some of the myths that are keeping you stuck, like holding on to your people-pleasing tendencies and not putting those boundaries up? Well, the first one is that if I set boundaries, people will think I'm rude or people will think I'm a bitch. Okay, people have limited availability. There's only 24 hours in a day. You can't be accessible to everyone at all the time. So there are physical limitations on how much an individual can do in every day. And it's really like the truth is the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries are the only ones who are going to get upset when you enforce them. So if there are people in your life who are like, wah, wah, when you're trying to put something up, like, keep an eye out, because they might be the ones who you're giving more to, where you might need to, draw a little bit of a line. The second myth is I need to be available at all times to be successful. Successful. And really, like, this is the same thing. Like, that's not necessarily true, because again, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. So people who are successful have successful habits. And a lot of those habits are about reinvesting into themselves, into their businesses, and into their optimization of life. And so that does not necessarily mean being available at all times to everyone for everyone else's whims, because I got goals I got to work on. So like, I'm not here, lounging around waiting for everyone to like jump into my calendar. Like, the most successful people are the ones who are the hardest to reach because they're in demand, and their calendars are very specifically time blocked and planned into the future. Another myth is that boundaries push people away. So I think this is an absolute myth, because boundaries build trust by being a clear communication of what both parties are willing to accept, in a way that no one feels like they're being taken advantage of. So boundaries really help to establish clear expectations. They really articulate, like I said, all of those energetic things, from a work perspective to a business to a family perspective. Like, this applies as much with clients as it does with aging parents, young kids, friends, different types of relationships where people have expectations of you. And sometimes you need to say, like, this is not going to work for me. And being clear about that and about your why will allow you to communicate and build a reciprocal, conversation around the boundary. So the person on the other end, like, can get it. They can empathize, and it doesn't feel so cold and so harsh. Another great one that is a myth too, is it like you should only set boundaries once you get there, quote unquote, like once you have more money, have more clients, hit X level of monthly revenue. And I think that's a huge myth, because like I said, when you're busy, when you're booked, you are not available at all times. And so boundaries, I would say, create the conditions for success. They focus your time, because your time is not just meandering, I'll get to that at some point. If you have a boundary that says, this is when I work and this is when I'm working on this task, and you hold yourself accountable to that personal boundary, then that's when you're doing the task and checking it off. It's not happening on Monday or like happening at a later date in the future. Which like takes me back to the final myth I'm going to touch on right now. Like what I said in the beginning, boundaries with yourself. A lot of people think, I don't need boundaries with myself. I'm just going to like go with the flow in life, and like absolutely go with the flow in life. But like, boundaries with yourself is where you get that accountability. It's where the magic happens. Like, something that has recently come in for me is a huge download, is that it doesn't matter what your goal is in life, in business, in relationships, friendships, building anything. It's about the reps. It doesn't matter if the reps are shitty, if they're messy, if you're doing it half-assed, or doing it all in. Like, the reps are the reps, and no one is going to hold you accountable to the reps but you. So having that boundary with yourself that says, I'm going to go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week, or I'm going to meal prep on Sundays so that I have food in the fridge to eat when I don't want to eat during the day because I'm busy. Like, these are personal boundaries. I'm not gonna, for me, a huge one is putting my phone on D&D at night. Like, I need sleep, and I like to sleep hard, and like, don't bother me. Like, when I'm getting ready for bed, don't bother me. So like, at a certain time, that's a boundary. Working on, your business, certain times of the day, that's a boundary for you. For me, my goal and my personal value was always freedom. That's why I talk about sovereignty and being self-led and having that independence. And my like perfect, like embodiment of freedom for me is a slow morning. I'm happy to work Monday through Friday on all things, but my mornings are freaking sacred. And like, they are so that I can show up and be big and be bold and do for my clients and be an advocate and like do all the things that my goals require me to do, because I have a boundary that says I don't take meetings before a certain time. And like, it has to be a really important exception for me to accommodate within that boundary. So, like, now that we've kind of talked about some of the myths, I want to lead you into the strategies that I use and that have been super helpful to me as I have come through the other side of putting some boundaries together in my business. So the first thing is like, what are they? Like, what are your non-negotiables? Like I just said, for me, my non-negotiables include my mornings, include my, D&D at night. Weekends, I don't like to work on the weekend if it's, not necessary. There's some things that are non-negotiables for me. And so I like really did the intuition part and the journaling part about what are my non-negotiables from an energetic perspective. And then after a year or two in business and working with clients and like trial and error and failing forward, I learned like what were and were not my non-negotiables when working with clients, when engaging, in my business, how I wanted the relationships to go down in business whenever I was working with an independent contractor, someone I've hired in my business, whether it's with clients, all different kinds of relationships. What are the non-negotiables? Whether it's like with your parents, like, did they want you to go visit for Sunday lunch every week? And you're like, Ma, I can only go, once a month. Are there boundaries from a personal side that you have to articulate as non-negotiable in order for you to feel like you're not turning your back on yourself, in order for you to make that decision with zero resentment? That's the key, because we make these, boundaries all the time that accommodate other people and, put other people's best interests ahead of our own. And like, that's not to say there aren't certain times to do that from a professional and a personal standpoint. But when we're talking about personal boundaries and putting them together, this is about you and what you need for you. And then next is like, communicate clearly and confidently what those boundaries are. So, whether that is through a conversation, whether it's through writing a letter or like putting, pen to paper, drawing a picture, putting a contract together in a business relationship. There are so many different ways that you can clearly articulate what your boundary is in this relationship. And it's that action of putting the energy towards the articulation, the process of putting words to it to gain clarity on the scope of the boundary, right? Like, if it's not clear, if you can't write it down, then how are you going to expect somebody else to know what it is? Make your needs known, put it on paper. And what I really like, especially in business, about putting your boundaries on paper is that when you articulate your business policies in a contract, for example, these are my working hours. This is when I respond to emails. This is what you can expect from working with me. Then it takes so much of the personal and the guilt out of it. When someone gives you a request that's outside of the scope, you can just like reference the document and say, sorry, this is a company policy. It's not personal. This is just how we deal with this situation in the business. So that's a great example, and similarly, like in a family situation, if you have to set a boundary with one parent or not another parent or a sibling or like an aunt or uncle, like this is just how we deal with these situations. And so it becomes something that's like less personal and less a guilt thing, because saying no to those people is not about them. It's more about saying yes to you, because by holding that line, you are respecting your own needs and your own, like, the person you were when you wanted to set the boundary. So, from that place of what are they dealing with versus what, am I dealing with? You don't have to hold on to how somebody responds to your boundary. That's a them thing. It's not a you thing. So whether, that energetic place too, like I like to say that contracts are a written articulation of your energetic boundary in business. But whether that's, an energetic boundary in your business, in your personal life, like these are all things that we have to just exhale from at the end of the day and stand confidently in our own power. Like, this is what I decided for me. And I'm sorry if it ruffles your feathers, but c'est la vie. Like, oh, well, not my circus, not my monkeys, right? You've heard that saying before. So that's a really great tool to just like, release any of that guilt or like tightness or tension that you feel when it comes to setting those boundaries. And just as we wrap up today, I want to guide you through a boundary setting activation here. So this is just going to be a couple quick minutes that will, get you into that energetic place to take action. I really hope that this episode has brought you, clarity and some fire in your belly around setting boundaries and articulating them as your superpower. Because when you have a strategy, when you stand up for yourself and hold yourself accountable to your own boundaries, there's like no limit to how good you can feel when you're living your life. Because you're essentially saying like, I'm not interested in carrying anything that has any taste of resentment with it whatsoever, because all of my choices are like good. I'm good with all of my choices. I'm not doing anything that's inherently against my own will. Okay. So with that in mind, let's take a deep breath in and hold and exhale. Close your eyes. Bring your awareness inward. Feel yourself sink deeper into your body, fully present in this moment. Now, I want you to picture yourself standing at the center of a powerful golden circle. This circle is your energetic boundary. It is strong, clear, and completely unshakable. It holds your energy, your truth, your sovereignty. Outside of the circle are all the demands, expectations, and obligations that do not belong to you. The weight of other people's opinions, the guilt, the pressure, the shoulds, they're all just sitting outside this boundary. Now, take a slow, deep breath in. And as you exhale, imagine pushing all of that energy even further away, reinforcing the strength of your golden boundary. You decide what enters. You decide what is allowed into your space. Now, place one hand over your heart and one hand over your lower belly, your power center. Repeat after me, either in your mind or out loud. I honor my energy. I trust my inner knowing. I release the need to explain myself. I set boundaries with confidence and ease. What is meant for me flows effortlessly. And what is not meant for me is repelled. Now imagine that inside this golden boundary around you, you have a safe space, a quiet inner sanctuary. This place is always available to you. This is a place where no one else's energy exists, only your own. Inside your mind's eye, you might see this place like a cozy room full of blankets and pillows, a temple for prayer, a forest clearing, whatever feels sacred and safe to you. This place is your reset point, the place you can return to when you feel drained, when you feel your boundaries slipping, when you need to come back to yourself. Take another deep breath in, and as you exhale, feel yourself settle deeper into this space. Look around and take in every detail. Whenever you need to reinforce your boundaries, come back to this circle. Whenever you feel your energy being pulled in 100 different directions, return to this place. One final breath in, hold, and exhale slowly. Now, when you're ready, gently open your eyes, bringing this newfound clarity and sense of strength back into your physical space. Your energy is yours. Your boundaries are important. What your heart calls you to do is important. And I would love to take this time, if you're in the process of working on boundaries, to come. I am hosting a free monthly live webinar called Contracts Mastery. So I'm going to be hosting this once a month, and it'll be an opportunity for anybody who wants to pop in to come and have a conversation about boundaries in business, about contracts or clauses in contracts, or anything that you're curious about as it relates to, how to articulate a boundary with someone and use that as a way to establish a little bit more sovereignty in your life, in your business. So if you want to come and join and ask a question, have a combo, say hi, please do comment Mastery. And I will send you the registration link with some more information. Boundaries changed my life. As soon as I implemented, solid boundaries in my business, it transformed how I felt. And I really hope that you can find the confidence to make your needs known and to, articulate your boundaries with unapologetic confidence, because you have to do what you need to do for you, and no one else is going to do that but you. So with that being said, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope this episode inspires you and brings you one step closer to living a sovereign life. And with that, court is now in recess.
Oh, 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 oh.
That's a wrap for this episode of Sovereign Conversations with the Soul Attorney. If today's conversation sparked something in you, let's keep that momentum going. Head on over to www.thesoulattorney.com to grab free resources, explore my membership community, The Cornerstone, and step even deeper into your power. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, my friends, keep leading, keep trusting, and keep building your empire on your own terms. See you soon.